Hi, everybody. Welcome to the weekend edition of The Bullet on April the 30th, 2012. My name is Paul Lathrop. I'm the Deputy Director of New Media for the Second Amendment Foundation. Joining me today for the weekend edition of The Bullet is Craig DeLuz from The Rundown, Brooke Cheney from A Great Start Shooting School. Goodness gracious.
It's okay. I know it's confusing.
And Alex Ooley from the Ooley Law Offices in Indiana. Folks, thank you for joining me today. We've got a lot of stuff to get to today. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to hook up social media here. I want to remind everybody as we're doing that you can comment on any of the Facebook or YouTube streams, or you can, if you have had Twitter, we'll be talking about Twitter later, but you can comment on Twitter with the hashtag Bullet Podcast. We'll get your comments on the air. But we've got a lot to get started with today. First story I want to talk about, it was announced, I believe it was on Thursday it was, that Donald Trump Jr. is heading a new Second Amendment task force. It's being billed as a new Second Amendment rights group. I guess I'm going to pass it around to you folks to get your take on it before I give my take on it. I'm a little bit reserved. Craig, I'm gonna start with you first. What do you think, man?
Well, when I first heard about it, I think my reaction was pretty much the same, I think, as a lot of folks. I was concerned because I'm like, okay, do we really need another gun rights group? But I also realized that not every group does everything. So part of it, I think, is what is going to be the focus. So, for example, you've got the Second Amendment Foundation, which doesn't necessarily get into candidate support or get into specifically addressing legislation. It's more litigation and analysis. You've got Gun Owners of America, which does do some political stuff, does do some candidate support. You've got the NRA, which, well, the NRA is the NRA. And you got Firearms Policy Coalition, which does both litigation and deals with legislation, but doesn't do any candidate stuff. What it sounded like initially was that they're going to focus on things like voter registration, which is a good idea. Get gun owners registered. Number two, make sure that they're educated, but also identify pro-gun candidates and make sure that they're financially supported. If that's going to be their focus and that's going to be their lane, then welcome. If they're going to try and do a little bit of everything, I think it really kind of depends on what they're going to do and what their focus is going to be. I think they're going to be successful in getting attention nationwide amongst conservatives mostly amongst conservatives to the gun rights issue. And I think that's something that, other than the NRA and maybe Gun Owners of America, we have not been as successful doing, because right now everyone keeps thinking, whenever you think gun rights groups, everyone still thinks NRA.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Alex, I'm going to jump to you. What do you think about the Donald Trump Jr. Task Force?
Yeah, like Craig, I'm curious to know what their purpose is going to be, what role they're going to fill that some of these other gun rights organizations aren't already filling. And if the focus is, like you said, on sort of political voter registration, things like that, welcome. But what's their position going to be? So far, at least what I've seen, a lot of what they have promoted has been sort of high level, sort of hyperbole. What are they really going to promote? What are they really going to do that these other organizations aren't already doing? The NRA historically has been very effective with legislation, but the NRA, as we know, has been in a little bit of disarray in recent years. So I don't know, maybe they can fill in somewhere. NRA is not doing what they have been, at least not as effectively. But we've got some great, obviously with the Second Amendment Foundation, FPC, some great organizations already fulfilling a lot of the litigation role. So I'm curious to see what role they hope to fill.
Yeah, very much so. Brooke, your turn. What's your take?
Honestly, I'm pretty much just saying no. Because we have so many different places where we can put our money as gun owners towards. And I would much prefer to see us support what's already there. One of the things, I've been in politics for over 10 years. I'm an elected politician locally. And it's just like, the thing that drives me crazy is someone keeps trying to reinvent the wheel. And it's just like, with the NRA broken, with so many different places for gun owners to put their money, I don't want to have another choice. I don't want to have to make another decision about where's my money going to go and what's it going to do. It's find the places that are already doing what they're doing. Voter registration, for example. Right here in Connecticut, we've got CCDL. And they have their outreach right here in Connecticut. So when I give to CCDL, I know that I'm helping right here in Connecticut. So I like keeping it local. I understand the enamor of getting national awareness and that sort of thing. But I find between DC projects, CCDL, locally and acting locally as a person and a gun owner, I find it much more effective. When I went to Donald Trump's site, and it just give me more money. And I'm just like, no, I don't think so. I'm going to keep my money local, and I'm going to stay here in Connecticut and fight.
I want to get John over on the Facebook side. We're already in comments and wants to know, will he walk the walk or only talk the talk? And I guess that's where I kind of wanted to go with my take on it. And that is this, is Donald Trump Jr., he's great at talking the talk, but remember, the Trump Senior administration is where we got the bump stock ban from. Trump Senior is great about talking about Second Amendment freedoms, but from his ATF is where the bump stock ban came. I'm gonna kind of withhold a little bit my support or the non-support of this until we see more of what's going on. Mike and I on Thursday kind of had different views on this. What I'm worried about is, and I drew this analogy, the NRA is great at this. They will send one of their minions into a state and do a little bit, and then, for example, they'll send one of their minions into South Dakota and do something a little bit West River, and then when something comes up in Sioux Falls and a bunch of us go to City Hall and say, you cannot pass this restriction, and Sioux Falls backs down, because the NRA had one person working out way the other side of the state in Rapid City, the NRA will start touting, look what we did in South Dakota. I'm worried that Trump is going to be doing the same type of thing. He's going to start seeing things happen and say, look what the Second Amendment, the thing that I'm working on, did. I hope what he does, if there's something that he takes credit for, it's something he actually did. That's my hope. And
if I could, Paul, just a second, I'd like to go back to Brooke's point about getting involved locally. I think I agree, Brooke. Certainly, I think our efforts can be most effective at the local level, and sometimes at the national level, it feels like how much difference can we truly make? And I think certainly at the state level, we've seen that with constitutional carry. Lots of states this year have joined the constitutional carry regime, and I think that's an amazing thing. That's largely due to efforts at the state and local level. As a matter of fact, I'm wearing a shirt. You can't see it very well on the video, but it's the 2A project here in Indiana, which was very effective at helping get constitutional carry passed in Indiana. So I think being involved locally is very important. But at the national level, like with the Second Amendment Foundation and the NRA and Gun Owners of America and lots of other organizations, I think it does help to have a division of labor, so to speak, because certain organizations are better at doing certain things. And I'm just skeptical that this new organization is going to be able to do something more effectively than another organization that already exists. So I hope that they can. I hope that they can help the fight to protect our gun rights. But they'll have to show me before I part with my money and support them.
I'll echo that. You know, I always tell people this: look, if there's a need you think needs to be filled, there's a reason why the reason why the Lord gave you that vision, and that's because that's something that you need to work to enact. The idea of working with groups that are local and national are not mutually exclusive. Although I always tell people prioritize local. But you also want to make sure that you're focusing on things across the board. You want to make sure you're supporting groups that are supporting litigation. You want to make sure that you're supporting groups that are fighting legislation. But you also want to make sure you're supporting groups that are identifying and supporting candidates who support our Second Amendment rights. A great example is San Diego County Gun Owners. It's a group that started of a group of activists in San Diego County, California, of all places. Now they've started up 2 other groups, one in Riverside County, I think one in one other county. And what they're doing is they're identifying candidates who support the Second Amendment, and they're having an effect on these local policies because guess what, folks? That's where right now the anti-groups are focused because they know they're having a hard time making changes at the national level, but they are being successful in particular in local municipalities where you have city attorneys and county DAs who really don't understand a lot of the specifics surrounding gun laws, the gun industry, and the technology. So that's where they're having successes. And so I think that once again, they're not mutually exclusive. And I think like the rest of you have expressed, it's okay to reserve doubt or reserve your support right now just to make sure, are they going to do, what are they going to do? Are they going to focus? Are they going to be good at whatever it is that they're doing? And are they truly going to be pro Second Amendment and not just a fundraising operation? Yeah,
exactly. DJ Play Nice over on the YouTube side says, state organizations, support them. Amen. Yeah. If you have a state level, yeah.
And for the DC project, for example, it's like we started nationally and then we went to local. And because I'm from Connecticut, we already had CCDL, so I'd been part of that. And it's just, I've seen the effect that the local does. But I agree with you guys as far as having something nationally, because it's great when we're doing stuff like this online. And it's like, well, I'm in Connecticut, but if someone from, New York State is watching, they have somewhere to go that's also organized. So it is nice to have the blend of both of them. I just feel like we've got lots of choices. And I do hope they're successful, and I hope they do something good. But I'm also not throwing money there quite yet.
Yeah. Well, and I also want to say this. Should Donald Trump Jr. have the right intentions, and should he be doing things for the right reasons, I wish him the best, and I hope him the best success in the world, because he's certainly saying the right things, and if as long as his intentions are what his words are, I wish him all the success in the world, because I'm pulling for what he says he's pulling for. I would like to. The next thing that's kind of slipped under a lot of people's radar. Are we going to be getting a Ministry of Truth? The Disinformation Governance Center. I did this. I'm trying to find the. Let me go ahead and. There's 2 stories on this. One of them is behind a paywall, and I've hit. Washington Times only lets me see so many articles, and I've hit them. So let me get this pulled up here again to find the actual name of the darn agency they want to.
It is first of all, it already exists, and it's called the Misinformation Disinformation Bureau.
Sounds a lot like Ministry of Truth to me.
Oh, well, especially when you consider the fact that they put a significant perpetrator of misinformation and disinformation is actually running it. And then let's add to the fact that this bureau, by the way, is already up and running and nobody knew about it.
I'm looking at a tweet from Lauren Boebert. Before she took office, after she was elected, I was fortunate enough to be able to interview Lauren Boebert. I haven't been able to since she's taken office. She gives her time to bigger media outlets than me, but the tweet from Lauren Boebert is, I don't think people are fully understanding severity of what a Ministry of Truth organized by DHS truly means. This is Stalin level. This is Mao level. This is the hill to die on. Those are strong words. Those are.
It's interesting that just a few days ago, Elon Musk announced that he was going to buy Twitter to save free speech, and a few days later, we're hearing all this information coming out from Biden, or he makes the announcement about the disinformation board, and I'm like you, Paul. I like to call it the Ministry of Truth, kind of echoing the 1984 novel, because this is really creepy stuff that the government's going to tell us and censor what is true and what isn't true, and that's a dangerous thing.
Yeah, I know when I had read the article, one of the things I know from before is that there's a large percentage of media that is already far left, or at least left leaning, more so than that's conservative or right leaning. And the quote that comes to mind is, if you tell a lie long enough and often enough, it becomes the truth. And I have friends who are very far left leaning, and they tend to listen to like one NPR or something along those lines, and they don't question anything. So my biggest challenge with a Ministry of Truth is that no one asks questions. If you ask questions, now you're in trouble. Or obviously it's misinformation because you're not agreeing with what's being said. And it's a very scary thing. And for those children out there who have not read 1984, you really need to go read 1984, because it was supposed to be fiction. But in today's climate, it's starting to feel oddly familiar, and not in a good way.
If I might chime in also. So what I do, I work primarily in the area of media, digital media and communications. So I deal with media from across the spectrum, from the right of the right to the left of the left. And I can tell you that honestly, there are two different realities that are being perpetrated out there, that are being pushed out there. And the mainstream media and the left are putting out one reality and pushing one set of narratives and stories and truth. And then you've got alternative sources, which is largely conservative, but in some cases it's just libertarian, or just, putting out the facts, that is presenting a wholly different truth. And the challenge with that is that when you hear some of the things that they're saying, it is amazing how, for lack of a better term, how many people have either not been given the opportunity to choose between the red pill or the blue pill, but have actively chosen to simply take the blue pill and be ignorant as to the facts that are not aligned. And there are also some good people out there who literally are misinformed, who literally just have bad information. I think, Brooke, you hit the nail on the head. A lot of it has to do with where they are getting their news, and the algorithms that have been put out there by the tech companies have only fed into that. It discounts stuff that doesn't support the narrative, and only works to reinforce how people think. And by the way, even we on the right, even folks who are on the right, have been kind of siloed into just getting information that supports their perspective. It is honestly scary, but it also makes having conversations about public policy very, very difficult, because they're misinformed or disinformed.
Yeah, I know this is old news, but when Biden picked up, a fully put together firearm and saying, "Oh, you can buy this from the mail," and through the mail, and I was just like, I talked to one of my friends who is far leaning left, and I said, the president of the United States just flat out lied to the American people, like really badly. And her response was, well, what's a ghost gun? Like, didn't even want to have the conversation about truth and the need for honesty in our media. And I'm like, if the president of America is standing up there and holding stuff and giving out false information, this is a problem.
Yeah. Dan over on the Facebook side says DGB sounds kind of familiar, like a Russian police group during the Cold War. Yeah, doesn't it though? And then John says, it's not a matter of what is true that counts, but a matter of what is perceived to be true. Henry Kissinger.
One thing I'd like to say, too, is that the government here is essentially interfering in the marketplace of ideas. Just like they do in the economic marketplace, they will stifle competition, they will engender centralization, and promote ideas that wouldn't stand on their 2 feet otherwise. So we need more competition between ideas. We need ideas that stand on their own 2 feet against other ideas. And by having the government decide what is true and what isn't, it reduces that competition among ideas and the free flow of thoughts among people on the internet and maybe otherwise.
And I can tell you, people want differing perspectives. I had a piece that I wrote on many of the misinformation that was being perpetrated about the shooting that took place in Sacramento and the lies that were being told about guns and gun rights. And I distributed it largely through a group called California Black Media, which serves about almost 3 dozen black media publications throughout the state of California. And it was one of the most read pieces that they've had, that they said they had one of the most read opinion pieces that they've had in a very, very long time. So there is a market even amongst the left for that stuff, which, by the way, is a reason why we need to be doing more to engage other media sources, not retract. And I know groups like the NRA don't do interviews with mainstream media, and I know that a lot of groups try to stay away from it. But going back to my Matrix analogy, it's important that even though we've gotten out of the Matrix, it's important that we continue to go back in to give other people the opportunity to take the red pill, to let them know about the alternate reality that they're stuck in.
Yeah, absolutely true. And well, I think that at least a large amount of people, not as large as it was perceived to start with, but with Twitter getting a new owner, a lot of people are going to be getting red pills because if what's supposedly going to be happening and algorithms getting torn apart and it becoming open source, what that if Facebook would do that, talk about a game changer. I would just love for all social media, for their algorithms to be open source, so it's truly what you see is what you get, and virality isn't a concoction. It's what truly matters, and what people want to see is what goes viral.
That would definitely be a different world.
Oh, wouldn't it?
Well, and to your point too, Paul, I mean, so many people have been censored on these platforms and have no idea what they can do to change. Why was I censored? Why was my idea taken down? And if the algorithm were open source, people could figure out, what the issue was. So even if you don't agree with the algorithm, at least you know what to expect.
Absolutely. And by the way, this is absolutely, since the show is designed, the weekend show is designed as Week in Review. Yeah, on Monday, the internet absolutely melted down when it came out that, yep, the deal was struck, that by October, unless everything falls apart, Elon Musk will buy Twitter. And a bunch of traditionally people that had taken the blue pill went into crying and fits, just could not believe their world was going to end. And all of a sudden, liberal accounts, people like people like oh goodness, I can't even think. Barack Obama are losing hundreds of thousands of followers, and people, on the conservative side are gaining tens of thousands of followers that only had tens of thousands of followers. Almost like people are trying to save their jobs by actually letting things happen that were already happening.
Yeah, I've seen lots of reports of, I think Ted Cruz was the most recent one that I saw on Twitter. He'd gained like 200,000 followers in just a few days, which was a significant percentage compared to the followers he'd had previously. So it's things are changing already. You can see that.
Yeah, I myself, about 3 weeks ago, started using Twitter for the first time in like 8 or 9 years. When the rumors of Musk buying it started coming about. And at the time, I had 58 followers because when I started using it, I was a trucker. And mostly people I really knew in real life, and when I was using it, followed me. And I was tweeting about trucking stuff. And then I just quit using it because it had this silly 58 or 100 some odd character rule, and Facebook didn't. And I'm somewhat verbose. And so, but anyway, when I started coming back to Twitter, my following on Twitter has been growing, and of course, the character limit is, I think you can, it's 200 some now. It's still not, I mean, come on, it's 2022. I think you've got computers that will allow you to have a full paragraph.
They want to be different, though. They can't all be the same, because then what's the point? Instagram, you got to have a picture. Twitter, you have to figure out how to say less with more, or more with less, And Facebook, pictures of your food. I don't know. But they can't all be the same.
And YouTube, you got to have your cat in the video, I guess. I don't know. And my cat's awesome. Around here somewhere, but... all right. What do we want? Let's see here. And by the way, if you are on Twitter and you want to get your comment in, you can tweet with the hashtag #BulletPodcast, and we'll get it in. Next story, and the I kind of have a problem with this lady. That she is the Democrat that runs the Department of Agriculture in Florida, Nikki Fried. She is she puts every hold she can on concealed weapons permits in Florida. However, on this, she's right. She is filing lawsuit against the Biden administration, and she wants to free up being able to issue concealed carry permits, or concealed weapons permits, I believe they're called in Florida, to people that have medical marijuana cards. Speaking, and I'm going to cover up because I do not know Washington State, SAF's. I'm speaking as Paul Lathrop. I personally, speaking as me, if you're taking as a medicine, or even if you're not, if you're recreationally, what you put in your body, I don't care. You take responsibility for what you do. I don't think it should affect your Second Amendment rights. I think this is a good thing coming from a not so great source. Does anybody want to jump in on this? Brooke, I know you said you had to.
Well, so there's a couple of things. One of the things from the article that you shared with us about this is the quote from it that I highlighted was, the lawsuit states that the DOJ and the ATF's irrational, inconsistent, and incoherent federal marijuana policy undermines Florida's medical marijuana and firearms laws and prevents Floridians receive the state rights relating to them. And I just figure when we're talking about the DOJ and ATF and the fact that it's irrational, inconsistent, and incoherent federal policy, I think that sums a lot up in general. And to me, it's not even just the marijuana, it's gun laws in general are really quite hard for people who are trying to be law-abiding gun owners. So I'm familiar with veterans who are fighting for their Second Amendment rights, who have PTSD and are using medical marijuana. And the fact that they have to make a choice between being medicated and healthy or their Second Amendment right has always been unfair. Kim Petters, who is our Delaware delegate for the DC project, has been fighting long and hard in Delaware, and I know she was able to get some positive legislation passed for this. So I'm hoping maybe Florida will be able to follow what Delaware already did. So that's what I got for you, Paul. Those were the things I was dying to say about this.
Okay.
Yeah. One thing I'd like to point out, Paul, too, in the article, it talks. There's this discussion about the Second Amendment and what level of scrutiny should be applied to restrictions on the Second Amendment. Obviously, we're going to hear about that hopefully in the upcoming decision from the United States Supreme Court in the New York State Rifle and Pistol Association case versus Bruin. But what's interesting about this with respect to the marijuana issue is that this sort of law restricting someone's Second Amendment rights based on their use of medical marijuana, I don't think survives any level of scrutiny. Because is there any reasonable or rational link between the law and the government interest that's supposedly being served? And I don't think that there is. So maybe it passes the lowest level of scrutiny, rational basis, but I certainly don't think it passes intermediate scrutiny, strict scrutiny, or any sort of historical tradition analysis.
All right. DJ over on the YouTube side says 37 states have medical marijuana, 18 have recreational. The tide is turning and the time has never been greater to address 4473 in a significant way. Yeah, I would concur with that. Craig, you got anything you want to add to this, man?
Just really, it's about removing the confusion, because in many cases, in many states, it's not considered an illicit drug and it's not considered illegal. So in some cases, that's recreational. In some cases, that's based on medical use. The problem is that the form in and of itself creates a lot of confusion for folks. My concern is that many people are going to fill out this form and inadvertently put forth false information, and it's going to put them at risk. It's going to put gun owners at risk. There needs to be a clarification, and so I appreciate this effort. While at the same time, I will just say that the person who is putting forth this effort is is somewhat disingenuous. I think this is someone who's looking for re-election, looking to promote themselves and looking for kind of an in to get some gun owners to say, well, maybe she's not that bad. No, trust me, she is.
Yeah, she's looking to get into the governor's office in Florida on the backs of this. I really think she is. I was in the article I put up in the show notes. The author posits that this may not continue when she leaves office because the next Secretary of Agriculture may not continue the lawsuit. So, yeah, we'll have to see. And she will be leaving office. And I'm going to jump around a little bit here today in the order of stories. Florida did not initially get permitless carry this year, and they got called back into special session because of redistricting. It was rumored that they were going to bring up permitless carry again in that special session. That didn't look that way. But then again, I seen in an article today that Governor DeSantis has said in a that he is going to sign. He promised to sign permitless carry before he leaves office, and guess what? His term ends in January. He may be reelected. He's running, but his term ends in January, and he's promised to sign permitless carry. We'll see. That's kind of where that. Anybody want to chime in on that?
I just hope it happens.
Yeah.
I mean, we've already passed 50% of the states having permitless carry or constitutional carry, or however we're defining it, because I keep getting confused with how people are calling things. But it's one of those things that it's probably maybe not as nice of me, but it's just like, I can't wait to see a year or 2 or 5 down the road when all of these states who have permitless carry, the actual results should be that most states should go that way, because now California, Connecticut, New York, Chicago, I know Chicago's not a state, but it may as well be when we're talking about gun rights. And for them to see, it's like, yeah, all these laws that you've passed, the background checks, the all the training, all the stuff that you're saying you must do, is not actually impacting the laws in the crime rate. Because when I've done research in the past, I looked at 10-round mag bans, for example. Massachusetts at the time was who I looked at because they're our neighbor state. And the 10-round mag ban has zero impact on crime, just like the Clinton administration 10-year assault rifle ban. It didn't have an impact on crime. If anything, during those 10 years, and I wish I could find this report again, long gun crime actually went up in the middle of that. So looking at the FBI, the DOJ, all of that, crime is not generally impacted by laws. Our prison population is impacted by laws, but not generally the rate of crime. So yeah, I'm looking forward to more states doing that.
The challenge is that that is based on an assumption. Your assumption is that anti-gunners make decisions on policy based on facts and what the actual impact is, and we already know that that is in fact not the case. What they will do is they will lie about the impact. They base the policies that they come forward with based on their intent. Right? What is the intention of the author? It was so bad. We actually had one legislator. He was a legislator. Now he's our superintendent of public instruction. But he actually came out and said, look, we can debate the intricacies of this particular bill or policy and the language, but what we ought to really be looking at is the intent. And see, the reason why they do that is because they figure, and they're able to promote that, well, on their side, the anti-gunners, they're trying to save children. They're trying to save lives. And those guys on the other side, well, they're in the pockets of the gun industry. And they never want they're not interested in looking at the actual impact or the numbers. So to a certain degree, we have to be willing to do the same exact thing. Not so much not look at the facts, because the facts support our position, but we have to realize that we have to put out arguments based on what is their intent.
Yeah. I want to get 100%. A couple comments.
And I'm sorry, I'm just going to say real quick, because it's Saturday.
Mm-hmm. Yep. It's
exactly why I do my suicide prevention Saturday every night at 9 p.m. Eastern, is because 2 out of every 3 gun deaths are suicide. And the more of us who talk about things like that, because if I want to save lives, I need to focus on mental health. And it's not saying people with guns are crazy. It's that 2 out of 3 gun deaths are suicide. So here I am trying to save lives, and it's by raising awareness of mental health. And so it's really hard for a lot of the anti-gunners to argue with me on this one, because it's like, well, we just want to save one more life. And I'm like, one life isn't enough. We need to save many more than that. So I agree with you 100%, Craig.
Oh yeah. By the way, you're 100% right. And consider, for example, countries like Japan, where private gun ownership is banned, yet the suicide rate is huge, right? So in other words, people who are going to commit suicide, if they don't have access to a firearm, they will find another way. What you're talking about is a root cause, and they talk about root causes, but they're not really not interested in root causes, because if they were, like you said, they'd be focusing on and doing things to help address things like mental health, depression, things along those lines, instead of going after the tool.
Exactly.
DJ Play Nice just threw up walkthetalkamerica.org over on the YouTube side. Great people over there. Awesome people over there. And I want to talk. I want to get this one up by Mary over in the Facebook side. Frustrating to live in Connecticut where we have laws getting stricter while other states are becoming constitutional carry. I want to bring this point up here real fast while we're talking about. And Brooke brought this up earlier, the difference between constitutional carry and what and my preferred term is permitless carry. Permitless carry means you don't have to go to the government and say, "Mother, may I carry my firearm out with me in public?" If it were constitutional carry, I could get in my M1A Abrams tank, drive it downtown, and nobody would bat an eyelash. That's constitutional carry. I could strap on an M60 fully auto and walk downtown and nobody would care. That's constitutional carry.
Well,
permitless
you can do
carry,
that depending on where you live, I guess.
Permitless carry means I can put on my Glock 17 in my inside the waistband holster, and I am good to go inside my state. That's permitless carry.
And just a quick shout out, Mary Louise, that's our state director here in Connecticut for DC Project. For those who didn't know who are watching, I think she should get the shout out for that. So follow her for more information in Connecticut.
All right. And we're getting some... the floodgates open. We're getting awesome comments coming in. I want to get some more comments coming in here. Let me.
And of course, I agree with her completely. Connecticut is brutal. It's like between Connecticut and California, we tend to be the proving ground, and it's brutal to watch. Our bad laws going from us to Blumenthal and Murphy, and this is again back to the local stuff. Get out and vote, people. Register, please. Take your friends to register too.
Absolutely. I really think, and we're gonna, Alex, I'm gonna bring you in on this because you're our resident lawyer, and I often lean on you for these things. It's May. Traditionally, May is when we get towards the end of May or tomorrow is May. Traditionally, towards the end of May is when we get the spring decisions from the Supreme Court, and I expect that we're going to be getting the New York State Rifle and Pistol Association versus Bruin decision at some point this month. What do you expect to see? I expect a victory. If I could I have you just expound on what the degrees of this could be, where this decision could put us?
Certainly. So for those who don't know, the case before the Supreme Court is the New York State Rifle and Pistol Association versus Bruin case, which is a case challenging the permit process in New York, which is a May issue process where you have to apply for a permit, and then in the permit process, a bureaucrat has discretion about whether or not to issue the license based on whether or not you're able to show some special need for the purpose of carrying a firearm. And generally, those permits are not issued unless you're politically connected or rich or famous. So clearly, if a permitting process violates the Constitution, it's this sort of permitting process because it's a significant restriction on your ability to carry outside the home. And the case was brought before the Supreme Court with the hopes of getting some clarification on what sort of scrutiny should be applied to restrictions on the Second Amendment. So I'm hopeful. We've got a a Supreme Court, the composition of the Supreme Court that's favorable, I think, to a good decision in this case. And I'm hopeful that they will strike down the permitting process in New York, and hopefully these may issue types of processes in other states. I doubt that the decision will simply result in an outright constitutional carry sort of status nationwide. I don't think it will be that favorable, but I think it will help future cases in terms of what sort of standard should be applied to Second Amendment restrictions, and then also I think will put pressure on states to move from may issue licensing processes. Now, with that said, if the Supreme Court strikes down the New York permitting process, I don't think other states will simply just say, "Oh, you're right. Our process is also unconstitutional, and we're just going to go to shall issue or constitutional carry." I think there's going to be significant fights going into the future, and that's where organizations like the Second Amendment Foundation are going to be crucial in forcing these states to come into compliance with the Constitution.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think what we're going to see is something like what Hawaii tried to do. Well, okay, but your permit is good for 6 months, and oh, by the way, you have to get 70 hours of training that costs you $800 every 6 months to get your permit.
And I think the Supreme Court has a tendency to decide the cases that come before them as narrowly as possible. So I don't think they'll come out and say states that have shall issue are going to be unconstitutional. They will reserve probably that decision for another case and a future challenge. So they will likely only make a decision with respect to New York's may issue licensing process.
All right, Craig or Brooke, do you want to jump in here?
I don't know. You just brought up the Hawaii thing, and we were just talking about it with one of my students yesterday, how elitist so much of the gun control is. It's okay. I can stay small. But it's one of those things I'm like, I'm looking forward to find out one way or another. Obviously, we're all hoping that it's going to be for our advantage. And it makes sense, but like we were talking before, just because it makes sense to us doesn't mean it makes sense to other people. Coming from a lawyer, though, I hope he's right, and I hope it comes out well for us. And it is always interesting how narrowly they are going to make sure that they stick to not being able to make this a blanket statement. So it'll be interesting to see what the actual wording is and how it comes out and how it plays out, because it's our neighbor. So if we can get our neighbor to do stuff like this, because I know here in Connecticut, we followed a lot of the things that New York does and vice versa. So here's fingers crossed to maybe we get closer to it being easier to get a permit for folks in Connecticut at least.
Yeah, I want to jump to some comments here. Pete over at Gum Website says, Craig has a point about the anti-side of the debate sidestepping consequences of their policy, but that is also an angle we can use to attack their methodology and reasoning on new laws, in my opinion.
Oh, yeah, no, most definitely, because we always have to start off with, we talk about intent, but then we reinforce the fact that the legislation either supports that intent or doesn't support that intent. And as we promote positive legislation that actually protects our Second Amendment rights, once again, we can look at intent. If our intent is to do this, then we're going to support this. And here's the methodology, here's the data and the information and the history that supports the position that we're taking.
And then, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say this point actually is related to the New York State Rifle and Pistol Association case, because hopefully the Supreme Court will decide what level of scrutiny or what sort of framework Second Amendment restrictions should be analyzed through. And if it's the lowest level, it's called rational basis. A policy or a restriction can be upheld by the courts if there is any conceivable, theoretical policy reason to have the case, to have the law. So that goes to your point, Craig, about sometimes liberals or progressives are focused on the intent of the law. So even if it doesn't actually accomplish the mission, the goal that it was intended to accomplish, it could conceivably do that, even if it doesn't actually do that. But what proponents of the Second Amendment are saying is that the Second Amendment, like the First Amendment, is a fundamental right, and laws restricting that right cannot be upheld based on some conceivable or theoretical purpose. There has to be an actual beneficial reason that's rationally connected to the restriction, and that has to be supported by some kind of data, and it has to be what I would say, under strict scrutiny, narrowly tailored to accomplish that mission. Okay, and most of these laws that anti-gunners propose don't have any data to support that the goal is accomplished. Okay, so hopefully we get some clarification on that from the Supreme Court.
Well, Alex, and one of the things that's actually additionally interesting about that is the government agency that's putting forth the law, or that's defending the law, they're not even the ones that have to come up with it. A judge can, on his or her own, decide, this was never argued in court, but I've made up in my mind that this is a reasonable, rational basis. I mean, and the reason why I know this happens is because it happens all the time in the Ninth Circuit Court of Schlemiels, as I like to call them. It happens all the time, where they just make up this reason or rationale. And mind you, I feel comfortable in saying that most of these justices that do this know absolutely nothing about firearms technology, firearms industry. They're literally just making it up based on what they consider to be common sense, but it's really out of common nonsense.
Court of Schlemiels,
That's a great
man.
point,
I'm
Craig.
stealing that. I am absolutely stealing that.
I'm not going to lie, after all the time, the common sense comment always makes my stomach turn just a little tiny bit, because I'm like, yeah, the lack of knowledge when it comes to not guns and that sort of thing, of the people who are trying to make these decisions, it's just, no. I used to think that politicians are out there, had all the resources they needed to learn about all the things they were making decisions on, and then I became a politician and I know lots of them, and I know it's not true. So,
well, they have access to the resources, but they choose not to access it. I lobbied for 8 years for the Firearms Policy Coalition, and I met with pro-gun and anti-gun members and their staffs and provided them with information to help them to better understand the issue. And there were many who just absolutely chose to ignore the truth. They weren't just ignorant, they were willfully ignorant.
Oh yes, remember,
and
Senator Murphy is ours. We have ignorance.
Yeah.
And you're right, Craig, too, about judges, because judges will often go through mental gymnastics to uphold a law that is clearly unlawful or unconstitutional. And one of the examples that I think of when you were talking, it was with Chief Justice Roberts when the Affordable Care Act was passed, Obamacare. The legislature said, "This is not a tax. This is not a tax. This is not a tax." And Justice Roberts upheld the law, saying, "This is kind of like a tax, so I'm going to uphold it as a tax," even though that was the only way he could conceive of to uphold the law, despite that the legislature said it was not a tax.
And wasn't it interesting that the bill didn't even originate out of the House that has taxing authority?
Exactly.
We see that all the time in Connecticut. Like they just go wherever they think they can get it through, where no one's paying attention. At least that's what happens here in Connecticut locally. We get bills that are gun related, that have little or nothing to do with them. And as you guys already know, it's like the name of the bill can be Save the Puppies and Kittens, but if you read the bill, it's about killing all the puppies and kittens. So, the more you know, the more frustrating it gets.
Wouldn't it be nice if we had something that contained all the world's knowledge that would, I don't know, fit in your pocket, and you could look up anything, anywhere, and it would be clearly defined, and you could have it in an instant. You know,
I don't know. Have you checked with the Ministry of Truth lately on that one? I'm not sure that worked properly.
Yeah. Well, we're coming up on the top of the hour here. I want to get one more comment in here. I'm really, really late on getting this comment in, but I want to get this one in. Over on the Facebook side, Craig says, check out the rundown Monday through Friday, 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern. Craig, if you would, please talk to us a little bit about that and anything else you want to plug on the way out the door, man.
Right. Well, the Rundown is a program that's done by myself and Mike Pilwarski. See Mike every other Thursday. He's once again here on the Bullet. Mike comes from the East Coast, as he likes to say, the coast with the most. I come from the West Coast, or the left coast, behind the Iron Curtain, otherwise known as the Sierras. We talk about 2A news and conservative views. So it's politics in general with a specific focus, and we talk a lot about 2A issues. We do it from a common man, common woman, common person's perspective. You can watch us or listen. You can listen to the podcast anywhere you get your podcasts, or you can watch us on OpsLens, Facebook, YouTube, wherever it is. So we encourage you to tune in. We always have a good time.
All right, Brooke, anything you'd like to plug? Anything going on with you? Well, first of all, it's Saturday. Plug what you're doing tonight, if you would, please.
All right, so it is Saturday. If you come find Brooke Cheney on Facebook at 9 p.m. Eastern, I do a short little 15-minute suicide prevention Saturday where we just talk about mental health. Sometimes it's tips and tricks on learning how to breathe. Other times it's talking about death and suicide and all sorts of things. But I always open with the same thing, which is, as gun owners, we need to talk about this more, because 2 out of every 3 gun deaths you hear about in the media are suicide. And if we're looking to save lives, we need to focus on mental health. Upcoming in May 22nd, I'll be shooting the Aiming for Zero match at Pioneer Sportsman's Club in New Hampshire. Check out Aiming for Zero. It is bringing awareness to veteran suicide and helping prevent it, PTSD and all of that. Normally my suicide prevention Saturday is really short, but on the 21st of May, I have a guest, Mario Mosen, who's going to talk about PTSD and veterans and that sort of thing. So that's my big thing. Obviously, if you're in Connecticut, New England, come visit, come play on my range, a great start shooting school in Harwinton, Connecticut. And that's what I got for you today, Paul.
All right. Alex, is there anything, you're not generally a media guy, but I have you on my show a lot. Is there anything you want to plug, anything you want to talk about on the way out the door, man?
Yeah, I am going to join Rob Beckman on his podcast, the Firearms Trainers Podcast, on May 9th at 8 p.m. We're going to talk about constitutional carry and even though there won't be a training requirement for people in those states that have adopted constitutional carry, we're going to talk about what people should look for in training and the sorts of things they should be aware of, both legally and from a practical training perspective. So if you're interested in that topic, listen into the Firearms Trainers Podcast. May 9th at 8 p.m. Eastern.
Very cool. All right. And let me go ahead and I want to get one more comment up here. And what you were just talking about, Brooke, was Pete over at Gun website, Aiming for Zero, hosts a veteran suicide shooting competition that raised awareness for the issue while educating shooting ranges, his options for assistance, and then gives a link. Very cool. Folks, thank you for joining me. It has been a blast. It always is. I really enjoy these Saturdays. We get a lot more time to converse and really explore the topics rather than the shorter weekday where we've got to hurry through the topics and get everything out. The Saturday gives us more time to sit and explore. And I really enjoy going through this on a longer term. Thank you for coming along with me on the journey today.
Thanks for having us.
All right. And
thanks, Paul.
For all the viewers, thank you. Thanks for everybody that's commented and joined us for the hour. And listeners on podcast, we have just absolutely exploded. April listenership is up 10 times over the previous month. So thank you, everybody, and come join us next week, Monday through Friday, 5 p.m. Central, for the shorter 30-minute version. And no show next weekend. I've got a personal obligation on next Saturday. But in 2 weeks, we'll be back with another version of the Weekend Bullet. Thanks for watching, everybody.